We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including an interesting trade idea revolving the Toronto Maple Leafs and Colorado Avalanche exchanging two top-notch superstar players. We'll discuss the reasons behind it, where it came from, and whether or not it's something they should consider. Plus, lots of other trade talk today around teams like Ottawa, Pittsburgh, Vancouver, the New York Rangers, Calgary Flames, and the latest on David Jiricek. We have updates as well out of St. Louis regarding a record set by Jordan Binnington. Is Willie Nylander expecting to be suspended? News from the NHL waiver wire, several injury updates, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Before we jump into a lot of the rumors and news, I just want to acknowledge the fact that it's U.S. Thanksgiving. So all of our friends and followers of the channel that are in the United States celebrating Thanksgiving, I just want to wish you a happy holiday. Hope you're all having a good Thanksgiving. Of course, tomorrow is Black Friday. Also a great time to get any holiday shopping done. If you want to be purchasing any NHL merchandise, great time to do it. There is a massive Black Friday sale that has early access at the NHL shop, which I will put a link to in the pinned comment. I've also done a community post here in the channel as well. Of course, we are an affiliate with NHL shop, so any purchases you do using our link does help support the channel. Just as a quick disclosure so you know what's going on there, but there is a 30% off Black Friday sale. So if you want to buy any jerseys, hoodies, t-shirts, anything, any NHL merch, whether it be for yourself or for Christmas presents or what have you, great time to do it. Lots of great discounts, and certainly check that out. And again, happy Thanksgiving to all of our U.S. followers. Lots of other news around the NHL to take a look at today. It's obviously a light day when it comes to action on the ice. All teams have the mandated day off, but of course, lots of action last night. Lots of action getting back tomorrow as well. We're going to have hockey all day because obviously U.S. Thanksgiving is a much bigger celebration than it is here in Canada. Of course, so tomorrow is basically still kind of recognized as a holiday, and there's games all afternoon, all day. So it's actually a great day to watch tons of hockey and have it staggered throughout the day, which is great as well. But one thing we're going to be looking forward to seeing tomorrow is William Nylander going to be getting a call from NHL player safety. I wondered where today was a holiday. I didn't know if we could hear about that or not, but of course the Maple Leafs battling the Florida Panthers last night. And we saw things kind of get a little bit chippy there near the end. William Nylander ended up cross-checking, I believe it was Nate Schmidt, I know, a Florida defenseman, to the face. It kind of looked a very kind of similar situation to what we saw with Timo Meier with the Devils just a couple nights before that. So, of course, Nylander's not a player that really typically ever gets in trouble that way. Pretty clean player, generally speaking. I don't believe he has any history that I can recall of being fined or suspended in the past. So if there is something, it's probably going to be light. Not like the Leafs can really afford to lose another forward, even if it might only be short term. But Nylander, I would suspect possibly will be facing a possible suspension. I would imagine we'll hear about that more tomorrow. They didn't have to really rush on anything today on a holiday where it wasn't going to impact anything today. But we'll probably hear that in the morning, I would suspect. Of course, last night's NHL action. Speaking of Thanksgiving, I know one player in the NHL, I'm sure there's many, but one player who is especially feeling thankful today, and that's for his teammates bailing him out, is Washington Capitals goaltender Charlie Lindgren, who had the ultimate goalie gaffe last night. The puck comes down into their zone. He comes out to play the puck, and the intent for him is just to put it behind the net and around, and he accidentally shoots it in his own net. It's like, oh no. Like, as soon as I seen that, I felt terrible for him, knowing that clearly a huge mistake. Tampa, who they were playing last night, was, a tough opponent. Ended up being a hat-trick goal for Braden Point at that, which is kind of weird. Imagine that's probably the easiest hat-trick Point's had in his career, and he's had a few. But the Capitals battled back, and they beat the Lightning in regulation. So I'm sure that Charlie Lindgren, of all people, is especially thankful. I know I've seen their post-game video of what they were doing in the room to celebrate. I believe he was given a player of the game belt or whatever it is they share around. So certainly, one of those things you never want to see happen. And fortunately, it did for him. Thankfully, it didn't result in them losing, because it would have been even worse. So he can let that slide. hopefully has a short memory and can move on. Today on the NHL waiver wire, we did get some activity, even though it's a holiday. The Calgary Flames, one of their prospects, have mutually decided to terminate the contract and part ways. Ilya Nikolaev, who was a 2019 third-round pick, is in the final year of his entry-level contract, had been playing for their American Hockey League affiliate and the Wranglers, and had put up 4 points in 9 games this year. But I suspect after not getting the opportunity he was hoping for, that he's most likely heading back to either Russia or Europe to play overseas. Lots of injury updates today. Last night we saw the Sharks lose forward Barclay Goodrow. He's now been placed on injured reserve. I didn't quite see what happened. I was watching the game. They were playing the Senators last night in San Jose. And he left, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was sometime in late first period maybe. It wasn't anything super obvious to me what happened, so I don't know exactly what the injury is. But super late here for me to stay up and watch those games, so I know I was probably a little sleepy, so I'm not sure if I missed something or what have you. But Goodrow is out. That was a game that the Senators won and did not deserve it. Both Ottawa and Montreal picked up wins yesterday. Montreal won in overtime, Ottawa won in regulation, but they both didn't have great performances and barely get any shots. Earlier in the night, we saw Montreal beat Columbus and only had 13 shots on goal. Wasn't a great performance, and the Sens were like, yep, hold my beer. I'll show you how to win with even less. They only had 11 shots on goal for the entire game against a supposedly weaker Sharks team, including only 1 shot on net in the third period, which was the game-winning goal from sniper Adam Gaudette. Like, that's crazy. He's probably the best bargain contract in the NHL right now on a league minimum deal, and he's got 11 goals in the season already to be tied with Brady Tkachuk for the team lead. Like, they never saw that coming. They thought they were getting a fourth-line center with a little bit of offensive upside, and instead they're getting a top-line right winger who's tied for the team lead in goal. It's kind of crazy, but that was the only shot on net in the third period, which was crazy. You could tell they looked like a team. Like, you remember just on 2 nights before. So on Monday night they were the Amazon Prime game against the Calgary Flames. Had a hard-fought win. Tuesday they had to travel, 6-hour flight, arrive in California, play the next day. You could tell they had no legs. Like, the team was outside of maybe Stützle, completely dead. Hopefully after having a couple of days off in the state of California, going on to play the Kings and Ducks on a road trip, hopefully they'll have their legs and obviously be able to put together a better effort and performance. But it's earlier in the season, the Sens had some games that they lost. They probably deserved to win. And in that one, it was the opposite. The deserved to win meter was heavily tilted towards the Sharks. Linus Ullmark stood on his head, was the best game for him in terms of him stealing it and kind of getting in a good rhythm. And a few good players for the Sens, and most of them had not much to give. So the Sharks put up a great effort. Fun to watch. I don't get to see guys like Celebrini and Smith play a whole lot because of the West Coast, East Coast effect, but man, they got some fun, young, talented players. They are going to be a force in years to come if things keep building the way they are. Some other injury updates here. The Avalanche have had to replace Miles Wood on IR, so they start to get players back, and another injury. Of course, Durant remains out as well week to week. The Canes have recalled Ty Smith on the back end. The Maple Leafs appeared to lose another forward last night, and like I said, Bobby McMahon left the game due to injury. Then we have the suspicion that Willie Nylander will be suspended. The number of forwards missing in that group is crazy. There's a possibility that Nyes or Matthews or both may return this weekend, so maybe they get some reinforcements that way, but they're waiting to see. An absolutely depleted lineup. They lost to Florida, but before that they had been on a roll, winning, I think it was 6 out of 7 or something like that, so didn't really affect them too much, but it might start to now with the schedule and the teams they're playing. In Vancouver's game last night, it looked like Phil Hronek is going to be out for could be an extended time. We don't have a full update yet. I imagine we won't get one until tomorrow, but he went awkwardly into the boards. Looked to be like a right shoulder type injury. Left the game, didn't return, and it just, you get a feeling that it's going to be an extended absence, but until we get word from the Canucks, we don't know for sure. It may not be too bad. And you hope for his sake it's not. But it could force their hand. They're already rumored to be looking on the market for help on the blue line. And then one of their top pair D goes down. It's just a bigger blow. We could see the Canucks, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, make a move regarding a defenseman in the very near future. In St. Louis, Pavel Buchnevich left the last game as well, injured. No quite word or update yet on him. but he could be out for a bit as well. Jim Montgomery's got that team playing well in the brief time he's been there, so we'll see how things go. Speaking of the Blues, we saw Jordan Binnington become the franchise's all-time leader in wins, picking up win number 152, surpassing a record that was over 30 years old from former goalie Mike Liut, of course, who went on to be a player agent after his playing days were over. Previous Blues goaltender who was actually with the Devils and interviewed regarding that post-game, Jake Allen. Jake wasn't playing in the game, but obviously was backing up that night to Markstrom, and he did an interview with one of the Blues writers, I believe it was Jeremy Rutherford, talking about Binnington as how he's done throughout his career, but Jake himself was not far off the mark when he was traded to Montreal. He was only 4 wins shy of breaking Liut's record. Binnington, of course, would have the record now anyways, but goes to show that that record stood for a long time. Of course, with Binnington still being there, has a chance to add to the franchise mark, which will become more and more difficult to be broken again down the road, but we'll see at some point if it happens. We got word today from TSN Insider Trading. Chris Johnson was talking about some of the things NHL is working on. Apparently, they're working on putting together we're approaching year 2025. It's the quarter mark of the century. So apparently, the NHL is working on having like an all-time team for that time frame for all teams right now. So sometime early in the new year, we'll get this announced. I'm not sure. It's not going to be like a full roster of like 20 players or nothing. It's going to be like your top 6 forwards, I think top 4 defensemen, and probably 2 goalies. So just your top 2 lines of each position, basically. So you're looking at about 12 players. So that'll be something that they're working on, just to kind of acknowledge some of the greatest players with each franchise during this more modern era in the last 25 years. So we'll look for that sometime early in the new year. Lots of rumors, as I said, around the league. We're still waiting on the David Jiricek trade. A couple of teams that are now also being included in that include Vancouver and Montreal. We had previously heard teams like Minnesota. Nashville was in the mix. I've heard the Sabres being in there. There's reportedly 10 to 12 teams, all of which have kind of made their offers. Some of them apparently have been told that they're out, that they basically don't have the assets that the Jackets want, so they're not going to be completing a deal. But there's still many teams that we haven't heard whether they've been updated or told anything on, so I'm not sure how quickly this is going to happen. I would suspect probably sometime over the next week, but we've been hearing for about 4 or 5 days now that it's getting close, kind of somewhat imminent. So it could go down any time, really. But of course, with Vancouver losing Hronek, they were already kind of in that position where they were not thrilled with the Myers-Soucy pairing and looking for a way to maybe make an upgrade. They had been linked to Marcus Pettersson, but of course, that's something that's, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. They know him well, considering the link to Pittsburgh with all the former Penguins in the organization. But obviously, Jiricek comes as a right shot guy. He's younger, good vision, good offensive instincts. The skating needs some work, but he's 6'4". He's got the size, the skill, the vision. Like he could be long term. He still projects like he has potential to be at least a top 4 right shot offensive defenseman. So teams are very interested here. If Vancouver does trade for a defenseman, it's believed that one player they're looking to move would be Nils Höglander. Höglander certainly had a rough go this year compared to last year. Last year was a major breakthrough. Things have not gone as well this year. So I'm not sure. I mean, with his value being down and performance being down, it might not be as interesting for some teams, but he's definitely a player that we know the Canucks would be willing to talk about and include in any potential trades. But Montreal, of course, have been having some struggles with some of their young D. I think Justin Barron, if he didn't need waivers, would probably be in the minors. I don't think they want to give up on him completely and risk losing him. So that's why he hasn't been demoted, because he would need to go through that process. But, certainly if they see Jiricek as an upgrade on some of their right shot defensemen, then it makes sense why they'd be involved. Some speculation that maybe they'd offer a guy like a Joshua Waugh, or one of their other Ds. So, I mean, they have lots of prospects there that would likely intrigue CBJ. So we'll have to wait and see if those two teams have what it takes to join that mix and make a serious pitch. But they're reportedly involved in some capacity. Word from TSN Insider Trading, as well as the Calgary Flames, are definitely still looking to add. Craig Conroy is looking for a number 2 center, but ideally somebody who's the right appropriate age, they say. So you're probably looking at, early to mid 20s. I'd say probably not 21 to 25 range. Somebody who's, played enough that they have a good idea what they are, and, at the same time not played enough that they're, beyond that age gap, a controllable asset, somebody who can be with the organization on a longer term basis, at least 4 or 5 years, maybe more if things work out even better. And that's kind of what they're looking to add for here. So, at this point, Calgary's had a great start to the season, near the top of the Pacific Division. So, most of us thought there was a good chance they would be sellers by the deadline, and that could still maybe come to be, could still happen. But at this point, my concern for Calgary is I don't think they're good enough to contend for a Stanley Cup, but they might at this point looking like they could, even if the second half of the year is not as good as the first half, could still squeak into a playoff spot. But, are they going to end up in that mushy middle and not get a high pick? That would be my concern, because I honestly don't know that. Like I said, there's a bunch of teams that are like, that mid-range, and you think a high pick would be super helpful for them. But, obviously getting into playoffs is a possibility, and teams don't usually want to miss out on it. It's hard to say how that's going to go. But they're looking for a number 2 center. They haven't been linked to anybody specifically just yet, but certainly look out for that. Ottawa reportedly is still looking for help on the blue line after the Artem Zub injury. Bruce Garriock has also mentioned that the aforementioned Marcus Pettersson, who I mentioned, who had been previously linked to the Canucks, is also a player that the Senators are kind of showing some interest in. Obviously, with their blue line being somewhat, thin, and they have a few guys there that don't have a ton of experience. As much as Jake Sanderson is heavily relied upon and one of their best defensemen, he's still quite young. He's only been in the NHL a couple of years. You get Bernard Docker and Clevin, who got his first NHL goal last night in San Jose, but they don't have a ton of experience either. When you got one of your experienced guys go down, it really kind of exposes the lack of depth. So adding somebody else with some veteran leadership and experience would be helpful. The only issue is short term, it'd be okay because they have the LTIR availability with Zub's contract. But, once he's healthy, it's going to be complicated from a cap perspective. I don't know who they would move out and offer in a trade that would actually intrigue other teams, because a team like Pittsburgh is going to probably want something back that's younger, like to help them kind of retool here, get younger, faster, more skilled, right? And obviously anybody on the Sens that kind of fits that mold wouldn't be making much money. So I don't know how that would work from a cap perspective. But reportedly, that's what they're interested in. And he does make some sense for them, but I'm just not sure how they quite figure out all the logistics. With the New York Rangers, we've talked a lot about in recent days of Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider being out there, according to Elliot Friedman from a few days back when he dropped that bomb on us this past week on, I think it was Monday, with his written column. But now there's also word from Darren Dreger on TSN Insider Trading that they're not the only names that are out there. And apparently, one of their younger players that still hasn't quite fulfilled his potential, former number 2 pick, Kakko, is once again in that rumor mill as well. And to be honest, I don't think we can completely rule out the possibility of a few others. I wouldn't be completely shocked if a guy like either Ryan Lindgren or Keandre Miller, if one of those guys who are both needing new deals, if one of them is moved, if Trouba goes, maybe that changes things. But at the same time, they have lots of things they're considering because of the way the team has been. The dynamics just not quite working. A bit of a shake-up to try to make this team stronger to be able to contend is what they're looking to do. Obviously, if they do move Kakko, was indicated in that segment with TSN, they're going to be looking for something, in return, probably on the younger side of things, a younger forward who can maybe be a better fit, better mix there. I know a player like Will Cooley's really taken off and starting to excel. We've seen Lafreniere take that step in the last year or so as well. Kakko hasn't quite hit that stride, so maybe a fresh start, which is believed by the NHL or TSN insiders, is that Kakko would be very much open to a fresh start as well to try to realize that full potential. In Toronto, a couple of things we'll talk about the potential trade, or the one that was discussed on TNT last night, but of course one update and when it comes to Toronto as well is the potential of John Tavares staying and extending. Apparently there has been some conversations around the former Leaf captain extending his time with the Leafs. According to Pierre LeBrun, there was really no desire whatsoever from John Tavares to hit the market and consider leaving. all indications are he wants to stay with the Maple Leafs and wants to extend. The belief is he and his agent, Pat Brisson, are looking for basically something similar to the Claude Giroux deal. Obviously, Giroux, similar age when he signed with the Ottawa Senators, 3-year deal, $6 million per season. It's believed, though, that the team would be more comfortable for him to take less than that. Of course, we know making $11 million that he would have to take a massive pay cut in order to make it work and make him stay. And I think both sides are certainly open to that. But right now it's looking like the team is wanting more of a cut than the player. So he's looking for 3 times 6 or something in that range. 6 to 7 is kind of what the number that was mentioned, but it's believed probably closer to 5, maybe even less than 5 would be what the team is preferring right now. So it's hard to say if and when they get it all figured out and sorted out. There's certainly no rush. The Leafs seem content to look at extending him if the number's right, and he's certainly very interested in staying. So they'll probably get it figured out, but hard to say exactly when it happens. That's where things stand here today. Now, of course, on the TNT broadcast, Anson Carter, one of the analysts, was talking. They were talking a lot about Mitch Marner and Mikko Rantanen, both being pending unrestricted free agents, both needing new deals, and so far negotiations not really getting anything done. It's believed in Colorado with Rantanen that they have an internal cap of the 12.6 set by Nathan McKinnon, that they don't want to go above that for a Rantanen contract. But it's also been believed, according to TSN, I know with Pierre LeBrun, he mentioned, because they talk about it on their segment as well, that he believes that Rantanen feels he can get upwards of $14 million on the open market. So he's going to want something as close to that as possible, to not leave too much money on the table to extend and stay with the Avalanche. Well, of course, he's been a terrific fit there. He knows they're always going to be competitive. Got some great star teammates. I'm thinking he probably is preferring to stay, but he's going to want his demands met, and it's going to be tough to do. In Toronto, Mitch Marner actually has had a really good start to the season. Been very huge for them in the absence of Austin Matthews. Again, I don't think the issue with Marner's ever been regular season. It's to a degree. Some people give him a hard time for being a bad playoff performer. If you look at his numbers, he's really not that bad. To me, it's almost like the playoffs get 2 versions. And to me, it's when the game is on the line, the season's on the line, when the series is falling apart, that seems to be when Mitch crumbles. The games that he hasn't produced in are like when your season's when you're facing the most pressure. That's when it seems to get him. Would it be huge for him to score like a big overtime goal or something, a series clincher, something like that would be massive for his confidence. But it seems like as the series goes on, if they get behind, they got to come, when they're facing all that pressure, it seems to be when he hits the struggle mark. But his numbers are not horrible in the playoffs, but Rantanen's numbers are really, really good. And of course, Rantanen has a Stanley Cup to his name. So Anson Carter talked about the fact that if both superstar players are having a difficult time reaching contract agreement with their existing clubs, should those clubs and he's not talking now, he's talking like after the season, basically, so they would exchange their rights or do a sign and trade. Should both of those clubs consider swapping those 2 star players? Obviously he says, Marner is because you're looking at the Matthews contract of about 13.2. So ideally the Leafs don't want to go above 13 for Marner. They want him under 13. And, if the Avalanche would pay him similar to McKinnon around that 12.6 mark, maybe that gets it done. If Rantanen's looking for something above 13, closer to 14, would they want to pay Rantanen that kind of money? And I have to think the answer is probably not, though, right? If the Leafs aren't going to give Marner that money, I don't see them giving Rantanen that money. Now, Rantanen they're completely different types of players. Very different styles, very different size. You're getting similar big-time production out of both guys, but they go about it completely different. So, if they're not going to pay Marner, I just don't see how they would pay Rantanen. See, that's where the flaw in Anson Carter's logic came from. Now, did it make good discussion? Sure. Is a couple of big names being mentioned in trade talks fun to talk about? Is it an interesting thought? It is. And I do think that, from the Leafs standpoint here, and I've actually made a similar suggestion like this before. Had nothing to do with contract extensions, though, because we weren't at that point yet. I've suggested it before because of style of play. So if the Maple Leafs have another early exit in the playoffs, they have to decide, because let's say they get to the playoffs, Marner's not signed yet. So they have to make a decision on Marner, and they want to maybe make that decision after they know where the playoffs stand. And let's say there's an early exit. Well, maybe they come to the realization that this mix, this core needs to change a bit. If they had that opportunity to swap Marner for Rantanen, who's a different style of player, it would be that jolt to the court. It would change things up, change the style, and maybe they would feel that they'd have a better chance to win. That would be the reason to make that move, not really just because both players might be having a difficult time having a contract extension worked out. At the end of the day, the odds are probably still favorable because it's early that both players work out an extension and sign a mega deal with their existing clubs. But could we get to that point that they have to look at it and think about it? It's possible. I wouldn't rule it out. But for me, it's going to be more about playoff performance. And I just don't know that they're going to want to bring in an outsider to pay more than Austin Matthews. I just don't know that that's really something the Leafs are going to have any appetite to do. And if they haven't learned their lesson before, the fact that they brought in John Tavares at such a big number is why all the numbers went up for Marner and Matthews and Nylander. They might have been able to get a little bit better deals. Now, of course, I know that they couldn't project the cap being stagnant because of COVID and all that. But still, at the end of the day, that free agent signing is what kind of blew up their cap. I don't know that they're going to make that mistake again. So as much as they would like Rantanen, as much as he might be a different player, good fit, at $14 million or anything close to that, I just don't think there's any way they go there. So let me know your thoughts on this proposed idea from Anson Carter and TNT. Should the Leafs and the Avalanche even have this discussion if they are having trouble getting both these guys signed? Does it make sense to you? Let me know your thoughts as well as everything else discussed today in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I will catch you next time.